What does it mean to be a human being? I am not a very learned man nor a very profound man, but I've done some reading in the history of Western philosophy, and I think that there's only really four original and distinct fundamental answers to that question in the history of philosophy in the West, and really in the history of our culture in the West. Because of the abbreviated length of this course, we'll only be looking at three. We don't have time really to do justice to all four of them, but I'll tell you the fourth that we won't read, just to round things out. What does it mean to be a human being? What is the fundamental nature of people, of human people? As I said, I think that there are four basic approaches, you might say, to that question. The first, which will be represented by Plato and his Republic in this course, is the idea that fundamentally a human being is a rational creature, a thinking creature. Another author who we won't read, named René Descartes, a French philosopher of the 17th century, said when he thought about what he was, that his best answer was that he was a thinking thing. It's somewhat distinct from, as we'll see, from the kind of answer that Plato will give, but what we'll see is that as Plato develops his answer to the question, a fundamental question of the Republic, which is not what does it mean to be a human being, but rather what sort of life should I lead in order to be happy and fulfilled, we'll see that Plato develops an answer which is not too different from that, but basically that I am a rational creature, that I am a thinking creature, that I am a creature whose thinking part, the part that can learn and know and understand the world, is the most important part. That's a general approach that many thinkers, philosophers, and others have sort of either assumed or argued for or explored in the history of Western thought. But again, it will be Plato who will be our representative, and his Republic in particular. I think, and again, this is just my opinion, right, but this is how I've laid out the course, the second fundamental approach to the subject, that is, the answer to the question, what does it mean to be a human being, what is most essential about being a human being, what is most important to keep in mind and must be understood in order to understand the human being. The second approach is the religious one. That is, that you cannot understand a human being unless you put them in the context of their creator. And as we'll see, the representative of this religious way of thinking that I've chosen is Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher of the 19th century, and in particular his book, The Sickness Unto Death. And to draw a little bit from Kierkegaard there, I think that the answer to the question, what does it mean to be a human being, for him means to be a human being fundamentally means to be in a certain kind of relationship with God. And we'll see that's quite complicated and takes a lot more elaboration to really work out. But that generally the religious perspective, which is, I don't know if we would say it's the dominant perspective, certainly for our culture, which is much more varied than it used to be in terms of religious belief. But for a long time, I think that Kierkegaard's answer was just assumed to be common sense. That is, you can't understand a human being unless you understand how that human being relates to its creator. The third, I would say, approach, which we will not be exploring because there is no time, and usually I would ask you to read Darwin as one representative of this point of view. The third point of view is that a human being is simply an object to be studied like any other object in science. That is, that human beings don't differ in any kind of fundamental way from the universe that surrounds them, so that they should be studied more or less according to the same methods. Physics, to some degree, but biology really would be the go-to science for an answer to this question. What does it mean to be a human being? It means to be a material creature in the universe that was formed according to the same laws as every other thing, living or inanimate. And the Darwinian answer to the question, what does it mean to be a human being, basically means to be a certain creature who is endowed with certain capabilities, features, etc., as a result of the chance evolutionary history of the species. And that leads to all sorts of other questions, but that's a general approach, which again we will not be exploring because there isn't time. I thought that instead that it would make perhaps a little more sense, having read Plato and Kierkegaard, instead to read Sartre's Existentialism as a Humanism, which is, I think, the fourth fundamental approach to the question, what does it mean to be a human being? What is human nature? Because as we'll see, the answer that Sartre, as an existentialist, gives to the question is that there is no such thing as human nature. It denies the whole premise that it's something that actually exists to look into. That is, that human beings, there is something called the human condition, but there's nothing called human nature. That what it means to be a human being, it has to be approached in a different way. So I threw in the Darwinian thing there because I wanted to sort of give it a certain completeness, but thinking about what we'll be doing in this course, we will be asking that fundamental question: what does it mean to be a human being? What is human nature? What is most essential about human beings? What is it about human beings that we must understand in order to understand ourselves? That Plato, Kierkegaard, and Sartre give us three fundamental and distinct ways of approaching it.